FiiO's been releasing some budget-oriented bangers recently, and they've just released an open-back planar. I'm here with Resolve, and we're going to talk about it. This is the FiiO FT1 Pro, and we've got a few things to say. How do you say we start with building comfort and then go from there?
That sounds good.
Cool. As I'm sure people can see, both of our units look a little bit different, and that's because we've both done a couple things to them. I think it's no surprise that sometimes budget-oriented headphones are not perfect out of the box, and there were a couple modifications I found I needed to do really to get some use out of this thing, and I think you felt that was kind of similar, yeah?
Yeah. For me, it was actually the pads. I was not a big fan of the stock pads as far as comfort is concerned. I think they're fine as far as like the quality of the material that goes into them, but they tended to sort of bulge in a weird spot that I didn't prefer a bulge to be in.
Yeah, you got to manage where your bulge is.
It's super important, yeah. The bulges, bulges matter. If I had a nickel for every time I've had to say that.
You'd have at least 3 nickels today.
Yeah, the pads. So I swapped these with different pads primarily because I wasn't a fan of the comfort of the default ones. But interestingly, I noticed that as long as you kind of maintain the same style of pad, like kind of this hybrid material, or in this case, I'm using some pads that are more kind of like a velour-esque kind of material, the sound signature is very consistent, very similar. I think it does change a bit. Like I spend a ton of time modifying or like swapping pads just to sort of see how this would change for different pad materials. And it did change a bit. Like if you go to solid leather, it changes. Or if you go with like really huge pads, it'll change as well because that sort of changes the front volume. But like I found that as long as I was kind of similar in size and shape and material choice, the sound signature stayed the same. And now I find it to be very, very comfortable. I don't have as much of an issue with the top headband piece, I think, as you do. And I wanted to ask you actually, like, how does the top headband piece compare for comfort between the FT1 Pro and the regular FT1?
The same in the sense that I couldn't really stand the regular FT1 without having a capper strap on it, and I can't with this one either. It just turns into like just a painful spot in the middle of the top of my head after a pretty short period of time. Actually, I wanted to note on pads too, I've got some pretty thick pads on here that people can see also. These are technically pads for LCDs. It's the Dakoni LCD Choice suede pads. And I sent you a measurement of these the other day, actually, Andrew. These are slightly less treble, around like 3 kilohertz. And I probably put maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 pairs of pads on these before I found a pair that had a similar sound signature to stock, a little bit less treble, but most importantly of all, a similar thing that I experienced as stock was that the stock pads were just a little bit too small for me, and they did kind of bulge out in weird areas, and I needed a pad that could actually comfortably fit my ear in it. Which is something that I kind of struggled a little bit with on the FT1, was the pads being just a little bit too small, but I could kind of look past it. These planar, heavy magnets in them, a lot of things going on. I just needed a more comfortable pad.
Yeah, and that's not to say that this is a heavy headphone though. Like actually I was quite surprised at how light it was considering it is a planar.
Yeah, how much does it weigh again?
370 something, I believe. We'll put that up on the screen.
It's really not bad.
Yeah, I was kind of also, I wanted to mention like the price of this is around $200, right?
Yep, and that is an area where I think we'll probably have some similar thoughts and maybe some disagreements too, because it puts it in a really competitive price point with a lot of very good headphones.
It does. I just wanted to also mention though, like as far as the rest of the build quality and the design is concerned, I think there's good and bad here. And I did the same thing you did, where I was just swapping tons of pads and trying different things to make it more comfortable. And I noticed the same thing, that for the most part, the sound signature is similar, but there are some subtle changes. And I found that like that's all that I really needed from it, was some subtle changes, but we'll get to that a little bit in the sound quality section. I just wanted to note for the rest of the build, the cup material, I like the way it looks, but this is the cheapest feeling part. It is this kind of like not great feeling thing on the outside. I do want to note as well, like we've been kind of harping on like the pads not being the most comfortable and the headband not being the most comfortable. The pad swap mechanism is very easy. It's just a ring around the baffle and you can just take a pad off, put a pad on. It's super simple, and that's why I've been doing this, because it's it's one of the easier platforms to do this with.
Yeah, it's pretty painless.
Yeah, pretty painless. But again, for me, I didn't have any issues with the top headband piece, but I do get where you're coming from. I think with the default stock pads, it was, not as comfortable as I would have liked. Now I find it quite comfortable. And for folks who are wondering what these pads are, I believe these are ZMF Universal Suede, but don't quote me on that. But there are so many different pads that fit on this design, so you can swap to your heart's content. How do you feel about the sound?
It's not bad. It's one of those things where it's really by itself not a bad headphone. It was a bit underwhelming at first because some areas of it sounded a little bit brighter and some sounded a little bit darker. I think that's just because there's some non-linearity in the treble. So like that kind of Headphone-esque 2 kilohertz dip and then a bit more elevation behind that kind of made it sound shouty or bright at times. But it really isn't when you compare it to something like a Sundara or an Edition XS. The biggest problem I have is there's some big competition at this price. Like once you buy pads for it, and then once you have like a capper strap or something on it, you are spending as much as you would spend on a Headphone Sundara, or in some cases an Edition XS, or more than you would spend on like a 6XX.
Well, I think that's it though, is that the prices for a lot of the competition it's gotten so much more competitive because those products have gone on sale, right? I think the Edition XS started out around $500, and now you can find it for like under $300 consistently. And the Sundara as well, it started much higher, and now it's a lot less expensive. So it's like, it is a really competitive.
It's like $250-ish.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I feel like the Edition XS is cheaper than the Sundara even, but it probably depends on when folks are watching this. But that's my sense of it as well, is that like, as a new product that's come out, it is competitive. But the other sort of like existing staples and really competitive headphones in the market have come down, so now it's like, it's almost like an unfair comparison. And I would say that for the sound quality you get here, my general take is that it's kind of like a warmer Edition XS, right? Like it's got similar features for the mid-range, and it's almost like if you took the Edition XS, the Sundara, and an HD6XX, and kind of molded them all into one sound signature. That's kind of what you would get with the FT1 Pro.
I strongly agree with that, yeah. Because the thing is that while it does have a lot of big competition, it is filling a need. And that's the need of, anyone who wants a planar in that price range that's going to be decent, but doesn't have as much treble as the others.
Exactly, yeah.
But before we do measurements, I just want to shout out real quick headphones.com for making these videos possible. They have insane 365-day returns on a ton of great products.
I'm told they have exquisite customer service, as you can see from Sam right here.
Exquisite, I like that word. All right, let's talk frequency response.
Should we look at the measurements?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I've got some HPT FE1s for mine. I assume you probably do also.
Yeah, so for folks, if you guys want a deep dive on the measurements, I've done a super comprehensive measurements post up on headphones.com, so forum.headphones.com, so that's our forum with the thread there where other people are weighing in. And that has all the measurements, so the HPTF measurements from both of us, but also all the individual results on individual rigs. And then also, I went through distortion and a lot of the other metrics. Check that out if you want a deep dive on it. I won't go over all that here, but there are some things to note with the measurements of this headphone. And you can see, again, like it has that sort of mid-rangey dip at around 1.5 kilohertz like you get with the Edition XS. But the treble, I think for a lot of folks, they found the sort of mid and upper treble of the Edition XS to be a bit on the spicy side. That's where the FT1, I think, does a bit better. But it's the lower treble where there's a bit of unevenness. And I also find, I don't know about you, DMS, but I find that it's almost like because it has less of the upper treble, I notice some of the upper mid-range more, like that 3 kilohertz ear gain stuff.
I would agree with that. You know what this actually reminds me of? This reminds me of like a budget version of an HE500.
Yes, but that also, I feel like that gives it extra praise because I love the HE500. There is a sense in which you're right, yeah.
I mean that in a good way, like it's not a bad headphone by any means. Like I think the FT1 genuinely is actually a pretty good option if someone's willing to buy pads and a headband for it. It's like, hey, this is actually, aside from some small things here and there, this is pretty linear, pretty good at that price range, but it is a compliment, me saying it reminds me of like kind of a budget-oriented HE500-esque headphone.
I can see where you're coming from. And that actually reminds me, there is something else that's really good about this design, really clever. And the only other headphone that I've seen do it at this price is the Sundara. And it's that there's an integrated leak somewhere in here, probably around between the baffle and the driver. And this causes the bass to go up a little bit in the sub-bass regions. So it's nice that it's, mostly linear bass extension, but rather than kind of tapering off at the end or just being flat, it kind of tips up a little bit. And that's because the driver here is reasonably undamped, and there is some sort of integrated leak causing that resonance to boost a little, just a tiny little bit there. And you see that in the measurement as well. So I think that's really clever, and I love to see that kind of thing. Like basically, like they're taking something core to planar magnetic headphones and they are leveraging it to achieve a bass boost, which ordinarily is not something that you see happen with these types of headphones. So that's really cool. One issue that I have with the objective performance here, it's a bit of a scrungle with the driver channel balance for this particular unit.
Oh yeah, because you had a channel imbalance with yours.
Yeah, so actually the channel matching for like 95% of it is incredibly good for the drivers. Like I actually posted this as well up on the forum. It's nearly bang on for the vast majority of the frequency response, but right at around like between 3 and 4 kilohertz. I think the intended sound signature is that there's a bit of a dip there, but I have one channel from the driver that is a dip, the other channel is a little bit of a peak, and that's where, like, basically this is just a modal feature on this headphone, right? And more kind of jaggedy presence in that range is not uncommon with planar magnetics, but you'd like it if they were lined up a little bit better. And so that's the one scrungle is, I really hope that this is something where, maybe I'm just unlucky, but either way, something like that I think shouldn't fall through the cracks, like that's where I kind of think the QC should catch something. And then the other thing is that the harmonic distortion here, while it's not audible with music, it is not the best that you can get, I think, even around this price point. I don't know how much people care about that. It's fine. You won't notice it. It's below the audible threshold unless you are doing stupid things with volume. But, it's one of those things where people do like to boost the bass to the high heaven. I think it would still be even fine for that, right? It wasn't until I hit like, 105, 110 dB where I started to see some higher order products creeping in. So I don't really think it's anything people need to worry about.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, overall, what's funny is that there's more things coming out at this price range now, this being one of them, that measure a lot better than things that are significantly more expensive.
Yeah, it is true. Like, I was thinking about this. Would I choose the FT1 Pro over, a 660 S2? Well, yes. My answer is, of course, yes. I actually think the FT1 Pro sounds better than most of the headphones that come out that are, under $1,000. But it is just that price range is crazy competitive. Would I take this over the 6XX? Yes. Like, I think there's an argument for it. I don't know if I would make that argument,
Right.
Like,
there is an argument for it, but I don't think I would.
That's it, right? Like I might take this over the Edition XS if I'm not going to EQ anything, because the Edition XS, could be a bit fatiguing up there. I would take this over a Sundara. I would definitely take this over a Sundara because it has cup swivel and the ergonomics are better. It's not as clampy. So that's a fairly straightforward.
I don't know if I agree.
Maybe not for you. You have a smaller head.
Yeah. If I'm allowed to put a capper strap and different pads on it, then I would put it on an equal footing with Sundara in some areas for me. Out of the box, Sundara is a lot more comfortable for me just because of the strap and all that.
Right. But I would say this is Sundara adjacent to me, and I really think that's all it needs to do. Like, that's kind of all it needs to be. And for people who don't like, the Hi-Fi Man designs, like the egg-shaped ones, you now have that kind of sound signature, a little bit different, but in a different form factor, and with a different headband from a different company. So to me, this product coming out is nothing but a good thing, because it just makes that market so much more competitive, and it drives prices down, or keeps prices low, right? You have something like this that comes out at this price point, and it's like, yeah, this does so much right, even if there are some issues potentially with the ergonomics that, other companies have to see this as like, okay, we got to do at least this good. And I like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's like changing the industry or becoming the new like mega flagship killer, but it is pretty competitive and gives us one more thing to point at and say, people making things a lot more expensive don't have any excuses.
This is true. The weird thing about this product is that this is a open back planar. It's called the FT1 Pro, but the FT1 was a closed back dynamic driver headphone. So there's really nothing
odd, isn't it?
similar. Yeah, I mean, the only
Yeah.
similarity here is that they're both competent, but you're
Right.
the only one who's actually tried both. So I would ask, which one do you, which one do you prefer, and B, which one do you think is just a more, competitive product?
Oh, the FT1 Pro is the better product out of the two. However, the regular FT1 gets so much praise because there isn't any competition. Like, it's in a realm where there's not many good closed back headphones, and the FT1 Pro comes in as actually a good closed back headphone. This is better than the FT1 Pro is, but it has a lot more competition to deal with. So it kind of depends on how you look at it.
To be fair, I haven't heard the FT1, like the closed back. I've just seen measurements.
The FT1 is brighter than this, for sure.
Oh, is it? Interesting. But
Yeah,
even though
and a little
it's...
bit less linear in some parts of the treble. More like between that 5 to 10 kilohertz range, the FT1 is a little bit more up and downy. And, again, both of them are good. I would say the FT1 Pro is definitely better, but the thing that makes the FT1 OG so good is that it doesn't have any competition.
Interesting. I'm very curious to hear the FT1.
It's good. I need to mail it to you.
We got to get on that. What's your sort of gut subjective take here on these headphones? Does it make your music quimble?
As long as I have the suspension strap on it, the capper strap, and as long as I have a pad swap, like specifically I really like these Dakoni LCD Choice suedes on it. As long as I have those two things, it's a really competent headphone and I feel really good about it, and I enjoy listening to my music through it. That's really what it boils down to. And there's only really one track with it set up like this that was ever offensive sounding to me, and it was one thing in the super ultra high treble, and that was really it. Aside from that, it's just a really, really enjoyable headphone. I like the way the bass sounds, I like the way the mid-range sounds, I like the way vocal sounds, and it does remind me of some of the things I enjoyed about the HE500, with the caveat that this weighs significantly less than the HE500. But then again, so would, putting lead bricks on the side of my head.
That's true. Does it slam? That's what people want to know. Does it slam?
I feel like it does decently. I feel like it's a decently dynamic and decently impactful sounding headphone. I don't think it sounds quite as a wow factory, super crisp that you get out of a Sundara. I don't think it's going to give you that same kind of wow factor. But I think if this is the sound signature you're looking for and you want less treble to the Sundara, this is going to be easier to live with.
See, it's interesting because I actually think, despite the fact that I hear some harmonic imbalances in the lower treble, like I mentioned, it does cause a bit of that sort of compressed sound to certain percussive hits with the stock pads, I should say. Pad swapping actually did alleviate that for me. I do feel that the FT1 Pro sounds a bit more detailed than the Sundara to me. It sounds a bit more, and I'm going to use an audiophile term here, resolving.
Oh, here we go.
Even though it doesn't have quite the same smoothness for certain elements of the frequency response. So maybe a little bit more contrasty, maybe a little bit more detailed, but not without some compromises to the sort of natural timbre due to some of those lower harmonics being boosted, on my head at least, with the stock pads. And again, I feel like it's cheating if we evaluate this with some of these pads that we've put on here, because we have these pads, right? For folks who are buying this headphone, they're just going to be using these ones, and so that's why, when I was listening to it with these stock pads, I thought to myself, yeah, it's good, it's competent, but there's a couple of places where I'm just maybe not quite as good as I want it to be. And that's really where putting these other pads on it alleviated it for me. So so you mentioned, right, your sense of it, you really like it, if you have a capper strap and if you have, those Odyssey pads that you have, or the Dakoni Odyssey pads. What about in stock form?
In stock form, I don't think I could look past the comfort.
What about the sound, though, in stock form? Because say somebody else is fine with the comfort.
I think the sound is great in stock form. Again, it's a touch shouty, but no more shouty than an MM500 could be. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a perfectly fine headphone. In fact, in some ways, I think it is probably a better headphone than things like an MM100.
Oh, yeah.
Not comfort-wise,
for
but
the sound quality?
sonically.
Yeah, definitely for sound quality. I think it's the next step for these guys. To me, as I said before, the unifying thing about the FT1 and FT1 Pro is that they are both very competent releases at really competitive price points.
Yes.
These are better than their than their FT5, right? They're more expensive one that has better build quality. These are better.
It's interesting, isn't it?
And it really is, yeah. So I would like to see basically the same kind of sound signature they've got here, just with a more premium feel, maybe a little bit more comfortable headband, that kind of stuff. And I think they can do that. I think that's sort of the next frontier for them. But as it is right now, I'm extremely glad that this came out, even despite some of the criticisms that we may have here. Like we're nitpicking. I think people who buy this product are going to be quite thrilled, you know, out of the box, maybe not with the headband, but quite thrilled with the sound quality. And it provides them a nice canvas to, you know, make some customization to it, you know, with different pads, for example. On that note, I will try and ensure that by the time this is posted, we'll have some of the additional pad swaps measured and posted in that forum post as well. So if you guys want to check that out, there will be a link in the description for that too. Was there anything else you want to say about this?
Not really. I think that pretty much covers all of our bases. I think that it's just a good all-around headphone at the price. I think it sounds kind of stagey. I think it sounds very...
It has that similar feature that the stagey hi-fi mans do. So
yeah, stagey, inoffensive, a bit more relaxed than things like Sundara. It's a good planar at the price. It's competitive.
Does it bring you joy?
I would think so. As much as any headphone does. Well, that's not true. There are headphones that bring me more joy than this.
Yes.
I enjoy listening to it. It's not I don't not enjoy listening to it. I do enjoy listening to it. I think it depends on the day. There are plenty of things here that I would rather listen to, but a lot of these things here are also notably higher in price.
Okay. Do you have a particular genre pairing that you like these with? Because I do.
Oh, not really. I listened to a lot of my library with these and kind of enjoyed them. There's a really interesting song called Window by the artist Spilltab. I think that sounds great on it. I think that the Woodkid track To Ashes and Blood from the Arcane soundtrack for Season 2 sounds really good. Rodeo Clown by Flip Turn, that sounds great. The whole album, Dragon New Warm Mountain by Big Thief, sounds fantastic. There's just a lot of good stuff that it just sounds right. Sounds like it should.
Cool. For me, it's my usual jazz stuff. These do great for that. It's exactly the kind of sound signature that I think you would want for that kind of music. It's what I want for my preferred genre of music. It's maybe not quite what I would choose for like electronic music or like rock, but it will do just fine with that. And you can add a bass shelf quite easily. It can handle it, no problem. But it does already have that bass boost, like I mentioned. So it's maybe a bit more appropriate than some of those hi-fi mans for some of those other genres that benefit from a little bit more energy down low. But yeah, no, that's basically all that I have to say about this. Conclusion time. Yes, I recommend this product. I think it's great. There are a couple of nitpicks I think that we both have identified. And I gotta say, a budget HE500 at home is high praise indeed, because that is a legendary headphone that anybody who's heard it loves it. You still have yours, right?
Oh, I do. It's in the other room. I want to iterate again that just like the FT1, I am plugging the capper strap here because I personally find that is kind of an essential modification for this, and it's cheap. I don't remember what it is, but I think it's like $13 or something, and that is really worth it for the comfort for me. Maybe it is. I thought it was like 13. Okay, yeah, they're $20. It's still worth it at that price. So I think that's going to wrap it up, guys. If you like this video, leave a like down below. Comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, get at the Discord or the forum, both available at the link in the video description. As always, don't forget to stick around, subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until next one, guys. Peace.